Welcome back to On Texas Basketball. I'm Jeff Howe alongside with Gerry Hamilton. It is our first OTB episode in the Sean Miller era, Jerry.
Wow. On Texas Basketball, Sean Miller era. That sounds cool, Jeff Howe. Good idea there. I love it.
Yeah, so we'll talk plenty of Texas hoops here. This edition of On Texas Basketball brought to you by Vaughn Lane. We'll tell you a little bit more about Vaughn Lane here during the show. But Jerry, we got the dead period fast approaching. Got a portal visitor on campus. What's literally the next few hours leading up to the 11th hour Wednesday night going to look like for Sean Miller and the staff?
Yeah, I think only one visitor now. Ja'Cory White, the 6'3 guard who'd be a grad transfer guard out of North Dakota State, originally from Olympia High in the Orlando, Florida area. Guy that averaged 17 points, hits career 40% three-point shooter, athletic guy, really good player. We visited Virginia Tech, maybe one other before this Texas visit. So Ja'Cory White's on campus. Matthew Abel just wrapped up a visit. He is the 5-star shooting guard out of Fort Lauderdale, Sagemont Prep. He originally signed with Miami, Texas, NC State, Stanford, Miami. At least those four involved. We'll have to see what happens there if that ends up being a fit for Texas. Tremendous player, a kid that I think may be a first-round pick one day and have a long NBA career. But we're in the NIL day and age, so we'll have to see if all of it actually fits. So that was the latest visitor prior to Ja'Cory White. And as you said, the dead period is set to begin 11:59 p.m. tonight and runs through April 7th. And then after that, it's going to be a mad dash to get kids on campus, but also the rest of the portal time. So the portal is not close to closing yet. So there's more time in the portal for more guys to jump in. And so we'll see how many guys Texas brings in. I want to say this. They've talked to, I don't know, probably more than 40 guys to this point. But that's just an initial vetting process. Because, you see all these reports, Jeff, that Texas and 20 other schools have talked to this player. But that's going to happen with a lot of these kids because that's an initial vetting process. When you get to the official visits is when this stuff gets real, like anything else. So we'll see how many guys. But I think for the needs for Texas, we'll get into I think, depending on what happens to Ja'Cory White, maybe an additional guard in the portal, and probably two more bigs in the portal is what we're looking at least right now.
Jerry, I think it's key for everybody to remember, too. You've really got three windows where the portal, three waves, as I've called it in the past. You've got the initial wave. You're going to have the wave coming off of the Final Four once the season is done and a lot of your coaching changes are finalized. And then, we've seen JT Toppin. Texas got Marcus Carr once upon a time. That final wave of guys is the guys that are going to enter the portal and the NBA draft. If they decide to come back to school, then you've got another wave of guys, another pool to pick from. So this is a marathon for Sean Miller, Jerry. It's not a sprint.
No, and then you have the possibility of some grad transfers late too. But to your point, Jeff, but there's not many of those. But to your point, yes, it's a marathon. And then I'll throw in the new part for Texas basketball fans that we haven't really had to cover: international recruiting. This is going to be an international recruiting program. That could be Canada. That could be the Bahamas. That could be anywhere in Europe and East. It could be Australia. Sean Miller's recruited players from all around the globe. He said it in this press conference. This is going to be an international recruiting program. And one of the things that really excites me about where I think Sean Miller will take this program, because all you have to, you don't have to look very far these days to see how many tremendous international players there are. And more of those guys are starting to come to college basketball before pro careers.
Jerry, when we look at this roster, there's a couple of guys that we should feel pretty good about coming back. Kendall Weaver seems to be locked in. Jamie Vinson, no movement with him, and we saw him very, very limited action this year. Nic Codie announced really about 20 minutes or so before we started recording, he announced that he's coming back. You expect Malik Presley back. The only loss in this first wave was Devon Pryor. But Jerry, you lose Devon Pryor, you had Dalen Swain. I mean, it's kind of a one-for-one swap. So as you examine this roster and pending with Jordan Pope and Tremont Mark, we'll see what those two guys decide to do. What's your take on this roster as it stands right now, Jerry?
Well, I think Dalen Swain was a huge pickup. I'm a big fan of his game, especially considering the jump he made from freshman to sophomore year. He's grown 2 inches since he committed to Sean Miller at Xavier out of high school. But looking at where he's going to head in year 3 and probably year 4 as a college player, a kid that's got rave reviews from the Xavier staff now at Texas about the type of teammate he is, the worker he is, how dedicated to development he is. So obviously Devin Pryor's a guy that had upside, but Dylan Swain's a much better player at this point. So Texas really upgraded there. Bigger, longer guy that can play both forward spots. His game's evolving more into a college 3 right now, but he is a slasher. He is a straight line driver. He can switch defensively. Really good player. And so what I would say is Texas is already a bigger team than they were last year. I mean, look, they lose Shedrick, obviously, and they lose Nyema. But they bring in 6'8" Swain, who has long arms. Nic Codie staying a 6'8.5", 6'9" guy. Jamie Vincent, we think he's staying 6'10.5", 6'11" guy. John Clark, the high school signee, expected to stay 6'8.5", 6'9". He's expected to stay in the class, played for TJ Ford, grew up training with TJ Ford, 6'8", 6'8.5", 6'9". So you already have a bigger team than you had last year. And that is before anybody else is added. And there's going to be a couple more bigs added to this roster. Now, will it be a portal guy and an international guy? Will it be 2 portal guys? That all has to play out. But then you also look at this. What if they get Jakari White? He's 6'3". He's a bigger guard than, say, a Jordan Pope, depending on what happens with Jordan Pope. So Texas is going to be a bigger roster than last year, because I know when Texas fans go 2 ways. There's 2 things they generally ask about. Who's going to be the point guard and how many – where's the bigs, right? Yeah. Sean Miller's going to have a bigger roster. He's going to have bigs. He's going to have longer players. He's going to create a more well-rounded roster. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect year 1, but over time, the guy's going to build the roster that Texas fans are all going to get behind and really like with a style of play. But, Jeff, the real question is around a guy like Tremont Mark, who could test the waters, go through the NBA combine process and then decide what he's going to do after that. That was one of the guys you were talking about. But what if a couple of point guards hit the portal that are really good players and really good fits? Then what does Texas do? So those are some questions that I think are going to have to be answered by this staff, but I like where it's headed. It doesn't mean you're going to win every battle. Look, in the NIL era right now, especially this cycle, there's some crazy numbers out there, numbers. And you can't sacrifice your roster for one singular player. You have to build a roster. And as a first-year coach, you have to build a roster that has some sustainability. I mean, you could get into that $2.5–3 million range for a 1-year player very easily in this cycle. But what if you can get 2 2-year players for the same price? Exactly. As a first-year coach? That's the things that, and not just Sean Miller, but that's the things a lot of these staffs have to kind of wind and weave through and navigate through right now in the portal, because of where the portal is as far as the NIL dollars right now in this cycle. It's as high as it's ever been. And that leads you to making some tough decisions on some guys. And I think Texas already made one of those with Ryan Conwell. That was, it got up there. And that's one of those deals where you can get 2 players for that price. And if you get 2 players that can develop in your program, is it worth it? So that's what all these college coaches are having to decide right now.
Jerry, to your point on that, you go back and look at the roster. The last time we had one of these coaching changes really of this magnitude was when Shaka Smart left for Marquette. I got the nice landing spot. Texas hires Chris Beard. You look at that initial roster for Chris Beard: Timmy Allen, Marcus Carr, Christian Bishop. All of those guys were guys that were multiple year guys.
Yes.
Dylan Dessou was another guy, multiple year guys. So while Chris Beard was building a team for that first season, he's also thinking ahead. Hey, if some of these guys use their COVID years, you could have a really special team in that 22-23 season. We saw that was a Final Four caliber team, Gary. And along those lines, so to your point about multi-year players, people don't need to lose sight of that. And kind of in that same vein, as I look for Sean Miller to build out this roster, I'm encouraged by his track record with guards. Yes. Because one thing that I feel got progressively worse under Rodney Terry, especially from the Elite 8 year, having that lead guard to run your second unit. Go back to that first year, any mix of Hunter, Carr, and Rice could be your lead guard. The other one could play off the ball. You were really, really hard to beat. More nights than not, you stepped on the floor with the best backcourt in the arena. It got a little bit worse the following year. And then this year, I noticed it early in non-conference, man, their second unit, they're going to struggle to score. And if they struggle to defend, they're really going to be in trouble. Turns out they were really in a lot of trouble, especially with Tremont Mark's injury. So, Jerry, as Sean Miller fills out this roster, getting that really good lead guard to run a second unit. I know that's kind of far down on the list of priorities right now, that's something I want to see if he gets checked off the list.
Yeah, and I think he will, right? And look, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect in year one, but this is a guy who's built some tremendous rosters at Arizona of guys that were filled with pros or they're NBA players or overseas players. He had multiple guys who could run his offense at the guard position. As you said, he's a guy that's won with a lot of more combo guards than point guards, right? But that's how you create that depth at guard. With what you're saying is you have three guys who can run your offense and get you into your sets. And that is one of the key things for me in college basketball is how many people have depth at that can get into your offense when things break down or can go get shots when things break down. Texas had this team had guys who could go get shots, but they didn't have guys who could get you in the sets, to your point, Jeff. So I think Sean Miller's going to do a tremendous job here. I think the whole key, and I know it's difficult for fan bases in the Texas fan base, and I would say this is if you look at portal rankings, just look at how many of those guys are one-year players, and those aren't for a first-year coach always the answer. I think the answer is two-year players. That doesn't mean if there's not one guy, but I don't think Sean Miller's going to fill his roster with a bunch of one-year players. That's not what I think the deal is here. Now you may have to have a guard in the portal at Ja'Cory White if you get him, and a big in the portal as you kind of build your roster and you build your program out. But I think you're going to have more times than not, you're going to have more multi-year guys being built. I mean, if you just look at your two Final Four teams in the SEC this year.
Yeah.
Todd Golden, Walter Clayton came from Iona, 2-year player. He's at Florida 2 years, right? Then the guard Richard came from Belmont, was a 3-year player at Florida. Martin, who came from FAU, was a 1-year guy. But Condon was a high school recruit from Australia who's been there 2 years. And then Chinaloo was a 1-year player from Washington State. So there's a couple of things to look at there. He missed the NCAA tournament the first year, and now look where he's at as he built his roster, and he's got a number of bigs. He's got a lot of skill, to your point, Jeff, a lot of guys who can initiate offense, whether that be at guard or the post. But they're not all big school guys. They're not all 1-year guys. You look at Auburn, it's the exact same thing. Janai Broom, who may be the National Player of the Year, him or Cooper Flagg, was a 3-year player there out of Morehead State. Then you had a 1-year guy from Georgia Tech, really key guard. Then you had some other guys who were multi-year transfer guys. And then you had a 5th-year high school guy. And then off the bench, they had a Division II transfer, and then Pettiford, a high school 5-star recruit. So, again, multiple guys that came from smaller schools, one D2 guy that were at that university on this team multiple years as they built. And then they added one more piece at the end, a couple more pieces at the end, a 1-year college guy and a terrific high school player to kind of get this team over the top. So there's a lot of ways to go about it, but I think you're going to see Sean Miller build this the right way for the future and not for one splash season.
All right, Jerry, we've got one more thing to touch on, but before we do that, shout out to our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Basketball, and that's Vaughn Lane.
Yeah, you tired of flying? You tired of driving? Now it's time to upgrade to Vaughn Lane, the smarter way to travel between cities in Texas, all your major cities. That's Austin to Houston, Austin to Dallas, and all stops in between. And for our out-of-state listeners, Vaughn Lane now connects Nashville, Memphis, and Atlanta. I'll have a joke about it at the end. Let's face it, flying is a hassle. Security lines, packed gates, delayed flights, all for a 50-minute trip, just not worth it. Driving isn't much better. Ever tried same-day round trip between Dallas and Austin? Woo, that's hours of lost productivity, emails piling up, calls going unanswered, and work left undone while you focused on the road. Why waste a day when you could stay connected and productive with Vaughn Lane? Vaughn Lane changes everything. It's luxury regional bus travel, what some call a private jet on wheels, including our own Rod Babers, who's taken it from Austin to Dallas, Austin to Houston multiple times. Sink into the plush leather seat. That seat's amazing. With leg rest, stay connected with complimentary Wi-Fi. Enjoy complimentary snacks and drinks on every trip, plus delicious meals on select departures. Need to freshen up? Indulge in hot towel service. Want to relax? We've got eye masks, pillows, and blankets to keep you all cozy on your ride to Dallas or Houston, or from Nashville to Memphis to Atlanta. The Vaughn Lane team takes care of every detail, so you can sit back, unwind, and enjoy the most comfortable travel experience on the road. Business travelers, capture your productivity. Leisure travelers, sit back, relax, and get hampered. Vaughn Lane is first-class travel without the hassle. See for yourself. Visit vaughnlane.com. That's vaughnlane.com and use promo code OTF25 for $20 off your first trip. And, of course, Jeff, you know who won't be using Vaughn Lane? That's Chris Beard, because he's not going to Texas A&M.
It's interesting that you mentioned Memphis, Jerry, that Vaughn Lane's running Memphis. I don't know if you've ever been to Oxford, Mississippi, Jerry, but more often than not, got to go to Memphis to get there. Good thing is Chris Beard doesn't have to say goodbye to anything in Oxford because he's staying, so he can take that Vaughn Lane route from Memphis to wherever he wants now. He's staying at Ole Miss, Jerry. This thing sounded like Chris Beard to A&M was about as close to breaking the tape at the finish line as you could be, and then it wasn't happening. Two things, Jerry. One, this sounds like Ole Miss is serious about competing in men's basketball and being a competitor in the SEC. And two, man, the poor Aggies, just when they had wrapped their heads around Chris Beard coming to College Station to save the basketball program, kind of like his whole time as AD, Trev Alberts is back to square one.
Yeah. I mean, so what should we say? Chris Beard swayed away from College Station. Is that what we should say? I'm guessing that's probably what we should say. But, yeah, look, man, that was interesting. Here's my thoughts on Beard. I think his next job will be probably in the SEC, but I just don't think it was going to be A&M at the end of the day. And it was close. But now let's watch and see how long he stays at Ole Miss and what jobs may open in the next few months or next year in the SEC. That's what I would say on Chris Beard. But, yeah, tough one for A&M. If you're making me pick a couple of possible contenders for that job, I guess I go Steve Forbes at Wake Forest and Chris Jans at Mississippi State.
You could do a lot worse. But, Jerry, look at that. Look at that picture of Chris Beard. That doesn't look like a man who would sway and whoop.
No, that would – no. And crazy thing was, behind the scenes, we were being told that if he did take the A&M job, one guy he'd probably have on his staff was Rodney Terry.
It would make
that
a lot
would
of
have
sense.
been interesting for Texas fans.
That you could throw Bob Donewald in there, probably would have gone with him. That initial staff at Texas, a Chris Beard initial A&M staff, Jerry, would have looked a lot like a Chris Beard initial staff at Texas.
And he'd have brought Mark Adams just for the Tech hate too. So,
Mark Adams would get on the plane this time.
Yes, exactly.
So he probably wishes he got on it the first time, but I digress. But anyway, A&M's still looking for a basketball coach. Texas has a basketball coach, and Sean Miller's going to keep working the portal. Bringing in John Clark from the high school ranks. Again, high school recruiting is still going to be a big part of this. We'll see what happens on the international front. Jerry, it's an exciting time to be following Texas men's basketball and basketball, period, because we've got the Texas women in the Final Four this weekend.
Texas women in the Final Four. We need to mention that. Aaliyah Crump played in the McDonald's All-American game last night. Looked really good. She's got a bright future in Austin. But Vic Schaefer was on Coffee and Football this morning. Great as always. And best of luck. Here's a crazy thing that Vic told us this morning, and I just hadn't done the research. Because Bobby asked him, have you played a team 4 times in the same year? And he said, actually, yes, South Carolina in 2017 when they went to the national championship game. Being in the SEC, played him, same type of deal, played him twice in the regular season, SEC tournament, and then boom, when it all mattered. So that is nothing new for Vic Schaefer. Good luck to the I call them the Lady Longhorns, man. I just always have the Lady Longhorns. Good luck to the Lady Longhorns. Texas women's basketball has had a terrific tradition. They've only played for a national championship one time. This is the 4th Final Four, and only in '86, Jody Conrad's great team. It's the only team that ever played for the national championship. So this 4th meeting with South Carolina, if they can beat the Gamecocks, this will be the 2nd national title game appearance in program history. That's saying something about it.
Yeah, I'm just happy for Vic to get over the hump, get out of the Elite Eight and get to a Final Four. So we'll see what happens in Tampa. But, hey, they're in it. We'll see if they can win it. Again, big thanks to Vaughn Lane, our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Basketball. Make sure, hey, Chris Beard, get familiar with that Memphis route because you're not going anywhere. You're not going west of the Mississippi, Chris Beard.
Does that mean the barbecue is better? It actually is better in Memphis?
Look, I've had meals in Oxford and I've had meals in College Station, Jerry. I don't have to tell you which one was better.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, if you like chain restaurants and the Dixie Chicken, I guess you can take College Station. But I digress.
End with that.
There you go. All right. Again, big thanks to Von Lane for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Basketball. All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Until next time, for Gerry Hamilton, I'm Jeff Howe. Thanks for watching, and hook 'em.